Hello, good morning, and welcome to ET Now's the Newspaper Show with me, Varun Hiremath. We'll be walking you through all the major headlines from the Economic Times and the Times of India this morning. But before we go any further, let me just remind you that while you aren't currently getting your newspaper, the presses are following all the necessary social distancing as well as PPE norms, and getting the newspaper is completely safe. If you are interested, do take a look at the top of this morning's paper, wantmypaper.com, and you can make further inquiries regarding how to get your copy of the Economic Times. Please do so. But let's get a move on. We have quite an action-packed day, and let's get you a feel for what the headlines are saying. And obviously, the majority of the stories and the paper covers the airline opening today. Domestic operations are going to resume, so we'll be listening out for the do's and don'ts, who's allowed to travel. We'll be eyeing out for that closely and bringing you more on that later in the show. Moving forward, Tata companies pay deck. So what we're looking at is the top chunk of employees, all your senior executives at Tata will be looking at as much as a 20% pay hike. So it's not just for the employees lower down, your senior executives as well feeling the brunt of reduced economy and business. Moving forward, something the centre is exploring is uniform labour laws. So we heard about that over the stimulus announcements as well. We'll be looking out for some clarity there. Moving forward, the telcos are urging the TRAI to fix a floor price. So that's another key development coming in from the telecom sector. And our final headline for this morning is the COVID-19 impact, Mumbai's UPS health infra. So that's another story we'll be bringing you more on later in the day. But let's get a move on. The first major story from today onwards, our domestic operations are supposed to resume. Now, there's going to be a lot of new standard operating protocols that weren't previously in place. Apparently, as of now, only asymptomatics are allowed to travel. That's what we're gathering. Now, there's also a bit of a clash between the state government and the centre. So the centre has said they'd like the airlines to resume operations, but each central government is actually coming in with its own host of issues. And as a result, you have states like Maharashtra, Chennai, that are only allowing a limited number of flights, at least in the initial weeks, and there won't be all the routes opened up. Karnataka, Assam, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Andhra, Telangana, Kerala have made quarantine mandatory for passengers coming and going. But we'll be bringing you more on that right now, and my colleague Utkarsh is joining in with all the details on this story and how exactly we're going to be resuming our air travel. Good morning, Utkarsh. Welcome to the show. Could you walk us through what air travel is going to look like for us from now onward?
Exactly, Varun. So as you in fact said, till last evening, there was a tussle going on between the states and the centre, and many states, including Maharashtra, was not in support of opening air travel. It is by the end that they really went ahead and gave permission to a very restricted number of flights. If you look at the metros, Kolkata is still not open. Kolkata will be opening on May 28th, is what we have been told. Hyderabad has only allowed 15 departures and 15 arrivals. Chennai again has only allowed 25 departures and 25 arrivals. Maharashtra again had allowed only 25 departures and 25 arrivals. Now, what has gone wrong here is that many of the people had booked their schedules, had booked their flights in accordance with the DGCA clearance, which was one-third of operations of these major airports. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and that's the reason why there were major cancellations which happened throughout the night, and it's only 25 departures will be or arrivals will be taking place from a city like Mumbai or Chennai, and Hyderabad is even lesser. But yeah, the SOPs for most of the states are simple. They're speaking about except it's not institutional quarantine. They're asking to yourself to go ahead and monitor yourself for some days. If you are asymptomatic, obviously, then there is a case of that you can be taken for tests and everything. But if you're an asymptomatic patient at this point of time, you will be allowed to go home and take care of yourself. That's more or less what all the states are saying. Some have gone ahead and spoken about home quarantines only, that you have to go and confine yourself at your home for the period of next 7 or 14 days. But clearly, what was expected, the number of flights which will open, say, a couple of days back when Hardeep Singh Puri announced same, it hasn't happened. What has happened, on the other hand, what we've been told is that it's a curtailing number of flights, but finally flights have started taking off in the country after a period of almost 60 days.
All right, Utkarsh, thanks so much for that. Definitely a positive development, and we'll be keeping an eye out for exactly how it all transpires. But moving forward, let's get you an update of what's happening with the COVID virus. 23 urban districts responsible for COVID-19 surge. That's the first one. Handset retailers take an earnings hit, so definitely feeling the COVID pressure. Mumbai ramps up health infrastructure in anticipation of more and more cases. Malls seek assistance from the government, so that's pretty self-explanatory. And the government, not the BCCI, will decide the IPL's fate this year. So we'll be keeping a close eye out on that one as well. It affects all of us cricket fans over here. But let's also get you the top 5 market-related stories. And for these stories, you'll have to go to page 4 of your paper and then take it further. Pharma emerges as the more preferred sector among the FIIs or the MFs, so that's something we know as well. New FPI registrations surge even as the incumbents bail out, so that's quite interesting. Short-term rates have fallen by 30 bips post a recent repo rate cut, so that's another encouraging thing for consumers. Reliance Group expecting 5,000 crore EV, so that's again self-explanatory. And the DPIIT to seek a nod for startup credit scheme and seed fund, so that's something we'll be eyeing out closely as well. Now, if you turn to page 8 of your paper, it talks about the market capitalization of the PSU banks versus the private banks and in general PSU companies. The 13 PSU banks together have a combined market cap of around 2.55 lakh crore. Let me remind you that that's just 10% shy of Kotak Mahindra's market cap alone, or half of HDFC's market cap. So what the paper is basically flagging off is that there's a real valuation mismatch between the public and the private banks. We all know the private banks get a higher multiple, and that's just because of various reasons, and the government also has fiduciary responsibility to the people, so performance is not always the first priority. So interesting article, please do take a look, and there's so much happening in the banking sphere right now. But let's take it forward. My colleague Pankaj is now joining in with what I spoke about earlier regarding the Tata Group pay cut for the top executives. Pankaj, good morning. Welcome to the show. Could you please walk us through this story? Seems that Pankaj is not really with us this morning. So I'll do that. I'll walk you through this story. Basically, what's happening is everyone's experiencing a pay cut across the company, across salary categories. Doesn't matter whether you're lower up in the chain or higher up in the chain, you're receiving a salary cut. Now, the Tata Group's history, the chairman of Tata Sons and CEOs of all operating companies will take an estimated 20% cut in compensation. So this is considerably large, as your higher up employees will be making a higher salary as well. According to insiders, the move is aimed at leading by example, setting an example for the lower grade employees. TCS was the first to lead the charge, and we'll soon be seeing a whole host of other Tata corporates also doing that. But let's switch gears a little bit to the power sector. Anil Ambani's Earth Power assets are up for auction as he needs to pay the banks back, and they're hoping to sell off 2 key assets. I won't mention the names of the investors right now. My colleague Vivek is joining in with all the details on this story. Good morning, Vivek. Welcome to the show. Which assets are up for auction? Who's bidding for them? How much money can be raised by these sales? Walk us through it, please.
Anil Ambani backed or owned company that is in focus. Now remember, just a couple of years ago, Reliance Infra actually sold the Mumbai power distribution business to the Adani Group. And the same reason, that he's been forced to sell most of his assets, he's looking to pay debt. And in fact, there have been a couple of court cases, not only in India, but also in China, where they have been asked to go ahead and repay some of the debt that they owe to some of the lenders. Now, what ET is reporting today morning is that there are 3 companies that have currently bid for the Delhi power distribution business. So one of the companies is Italy-based Enel Group. The other one is Greenco, and the third one, very interestingly, is Torrent Power. Again, this is a listed entity, and they are in race for Anil Ambani's stake. So when you're talking about the assets, there are 2 key assets that you're looking at. The first one, both of them are distribution companies. The first one is BSES Rajdhani Power, and the second one is BSES Yamuna Power. Now, when you're talking about these two assets, both of them are joint ventures with the Delhi government. 51% stake is owned by the Anil Ambani Group, and 49% stake is owned by the Delhi government. Now, remember, most of these assets generally have steady cash flows. Even though distribution companies have been under quite a bit of stress, last couple of years, they have been slightly better due to the stringent regulations in terms of repayment that have been put. If you had to look at valuations, the Mumbai Power Distribution got somewhere close to over 16,000 crore rupees. When you're talking about the financials of this particular company or these two companies, these two discoms, the revenues are in excess of 15,000 crore for the year gone by, and the EBITDA was close to 2,000 crore. So overall, this is a very important asset, highest number of customers, and it'll be interesting to see at the end who actually gets this particular asset.
All right, Vivek, thank you so much for walking us through that, and quite an exciting auction for some of the other power companies who aren't stressed, like you said. But switching gears a little bit, page 4 of the Economic Times talking about the telcos urging the TRAI to set a minimum floor price. Now, if you're a telco, there's roughly two things you can do to really improve your profitability. One is you can take a tariff hike, and then you can cut down your expenses. So tariff hikes are viewed negatively by consumers because it basically means that we have to pay more and more for data and for phone calling and their services. And that's something we've been hearing about recently. When the telcos did have a tariff hike not too long ago, there was a lot of complaints on the consumer side. So this time what the telcos are actually saying is that investment demands have gone up for the telcos. And right now, given that there's only 3 of them, there's a lot of price pressure as well. So what they would like the regulator to do is step in and set a minimum floor price. Now that will ensure that the telcos can function to a certain level of efficiency and meet their operating and fixed costs, and they don't need to worry so much about the future or being viable. Then they can really focus on enhancing their operations. So that's basically in a nutshell what the story is about. There's so much